According to some people, London Fashion Week is officially dead. Welcome back to the channel, guys. It's Tomas sharing all my thoughts on fashion, lifestyle, and anything else that comes to mind. I'm here every single Wednesday with some surprise uploads on Sunday, so make sure you turn on the bell so you're notified every time I upload and you don't miss a single video. Today, I am back with my Fashion Week coverage. We did New York like about a week and a half ago, so now we're moving on to London. In fact, I only have 3 shows that I really want to talk about this season, so I thought I would kind of discuss the way that London Fashion Week is kind of like operating right now. I do think in terms of like fashion right now, a lot of brands are struggling. I think London is probably the city that is shrinking the most. I used to remember when I actually lived in London 10 years ago that the fashion weeks were almost 7 to 8 days long, and this particular fashion week was only 4 days. It was the 20th to 24th, which I just think is absolutely insane. By the way, if you're new here, make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribe to the channel. It's absolutely free. So make sure you subscribe because who doesn't want more of me? I think a big sign that London Fashion Week is shrinking is the size of the influencers that are going to the events. I know that the influencers aren't really the biggest part of what makes a fashion week successful. When you have the most main influencers skipping the city altogether, I think that's a pretty big sign that there's probably not enough. There's not enough incentive for them to go to the city to begin with. I have always been a huge fan of London Fashion Week. I think there is a distinct kind of like, we have to make it creativity that is in the city that you don't really find in any of the other cities. For example, I think in Milan and Paris, you have these established houses and brands that have been around for many years. I feel like in New York, there's just kind of like competitiveness between a lot of the brands that tend to be quite similar to each other. But then in London, we get this kind of like visceral creativity that stems from like so many different walks of life. Like, I feel like London truly has this kind of like amassed this such difference of culture where like you have so many different designers like on the schedule. Like, I'll even look at it and it's like Ashley Williams, and then you got Chet Lowe, and then you got Roxanda or Erdem, Simone Rocha, but then you finish it off with Burberry, right? There's so much like different cultures and like heritages that at the end of the day still really real from like British heritage, which I think is like really interesting. I think back of like 2012, 2013, 2014, Burberry was kind of like the main event of the fashion week, and it was like these huge fashion shows and like they were live streamed. That was kind of like groundbreaking back then. Now it's kind of these like smaller designers, and I think like pledges like Fashion East, Lulu Kennedy, who kind of puts 3 designers on like a contract for 3 seasons, and she's bred like some of the most important, notorious like British designers from her like collective. So I think that's also a really important thing. But also, I feel like in terms of the British fashion, the BFC, I feel like maybe there's not enough support for these designers, and it makes me sad because I feel like a lot of these designers are actually so creative. Like, I just think of like Chet Lowe, who luckily showed this season as well, who is so niche, but at the same time, it's actually so like inventive, and the way that these designers kind of like operate their businesses. I think of Dilara, who I can't compare to any other designer in the game right now because I just feel like she's so one of a kind. And I feel like you wouldn't get these types of designers in Milan or Paris. So hopefully this season was kind of a restructuring season. I know a lot of designers chose not to show. I know a lot of these smaller brands like Ashley Williams. I believe even David Coma chose not to show. Hopefully, it's just kind of a restructuring. I think with the economy and the kind of like, I feel like overall we're all a little bit kind of tired and wound down from like the current state of life. So I think having a quiet season is sometimes good. And I think hopefully a lot of these brands are restructuring. And if it means that they need to take a season off so the brand doesn't shutter, I'm all for it. I'm also a really big proponent that you don't exactly always need a fashion show to properly disclose or show your line. Like, I feel like maybe doing like an activation or even doing like a video where you're showcasing all the looks or even a presentation, I think is actually just fine enough. You don't always need to do a runway show. Yeah, I wanted to include this part at the start of the video because I think like a lot of people are saying that London Fashion Week is dying out, and I really hope that's not the case. Hopefully it's just a little bit of a restructuring moment for the city, and we really don't get this kind of creativity and this kind of like uniqueness in any other cities. So I really hope in the future it'll go back to how London used to be one of the major cities and like how it used to thrive, hopefully. Now, moving on, I'm going to do my little fashion reviews. I only have 3 brands to talk about. There weren't that many shows this season. I think I actually counted less than 20 in the span of the whole week. So I'm just going to talk about what I loved. There wasn't any other show that I particularly didn't like. I know sometimes I like to include one, but for the most part, there wasn't anything that I hated that much. The first one is going to be S.S Daley. So S.S Daley has been kind of like a up and coming British designer. I feel like you guys have probably seen those like little like duck cardigans that he shows. I know Harry Styles loves the brand and wears the brand quite often. The thing I love about S.S Daley is that I love that the British heritage is always included in the collections. You know, we got the tong, the jackets, skinny capris, those like nylon bomber jackets with the workwear kind of vibe. It's very like OG British heritage, but then he manages to kind of like twist it into like a really modern wearable way. I also feel like I love that he does this great mix of like whimsicality with like truly wearable pieces, even though sometimes I feel like it feels really current and might not stand the test of time, whether it's past 1 season or 2 seasons. So even though I do like the whimsicality of it, sometimes it does feel like a little bit too like digestible and quick. This season, I feel like the standout statement where like the knitwear with like the cutesy prints, a lot of it did seem like a little bit low ave. I know the skirts at the end, those like kind of Victorian era skirts, those felt a little bit too low Ave. I feel like low Ave definitely has sons. I feel like a lot of brands are kind of just like copying low Ave right now. Obviously, he kind of has to develop the line more. I don't necessarily think that we need like evening wear for him. I don't think that he's kind of like that designer that we would go to for evening wear to begin with. So like these looks at the end were kind of confusing. I guess he just wanted to try something new, but those like skirts that he did a few looks from really weren't my vibe. I didn't like them at all, actually. I feel like the standout of the collection was the knitwear. I think it's absolutely beautiful. It's so sellable, so wearable, yet still feels like I'm buying like a piece of fashion. You know what I mean? Like we go to high street stores and it's just like product, but I feel like with this, it's product and it's wearable, but I still feel like I'm buying fashion. So I'm a really big fan of S.S Daley. I feel like he's one of those designers that is really focusing on modernizing the British heritage, which I really like. Great collection. I do get that he was trying to push the brand forward, but I just think maybe the finale looks that felt like a little bit focusing on evening wear weren't really the strongest in my opinion. Next, we have Dilara Findikoglu, one of the most exciting and amazing, incredible designers we have in the game right now. I actually saw so much content on like Twitter saying that she should be the next creative director of McQueen. And I wonder if she really like applied for it because I actually think that like she would do really well at a house like McQueen because McQueen was kind of built off that like Victorian sexiness that I feel like Dilara really hones in on, which I really like. The only thing that I'm worried about is that I feel like her aesthetic, even though it works really well for her brand, might feel a little bit old if she was at a brand like McQueen. You're expected to kind of develop different looks with every single season, and I feel like she does her look so well that I wouldn't be confident that she'd be able to do any other look. This collection was just absolutely incredible. I loved the classic bodysuits and the corsetry that she always does. And I feel like, yes, it's seen as a very sexy and very sensual brand, but I feel like the way that she like makes the clothes and she puts it on the models, it ultimately feels like she's kind of like it's designed very from a woman's standpoint. And I feel it kind of feels like, you know, we see these sexy corsets that are kind of like super tight and restricting on the body, but it always feels like it's kind of protecting the woman, which I really like. Versus for example, can I think of like you think of Tom Ford, who used to do the or D squared, who used to do this kind of overt sexiness that doesn't always feel like it's on like the woman's side. It always feels like it's kind of like for the male gaze. But Dilara always just kind of does it in a way that feels like it's very protective of the woman. And I just absolutely like it's just incredible. There was I believe it was the second or third look, this like chainmail piece of like pearls. I'll put a picture here. It was just mind blowing, absolutely gorgeous. A concern, which also can be seen as a positive, is that I feel like her line is so couture that it might be a little difficult to make it into a full ready to wear line. I know a few of these like cropped jackets that she did can fully be like maybe like adjusted to be better for retail, you know, that you can wear those with like a white t-shirt and jeans. But a lot of it does feel very couture like, which worries me because I feel like she might not be able to have a viable business unless she does have like a lot of those clients that actually like buy the one-off dresses. I do feel like sometimes it feels like a niche business and sometimes leads into costume territory, especially the chiffon dresses and the Victorian jackets. But again, I do think if she maybe reworks a few of the pieces, that they can fully be bought for like a department store like Selfridges. I've looked on her website before, and she actually has a lot of the couture dresses listed. They're even listed for like £30,000. I don't think she has that many stockists. So I definitely feel like the business is really small right now, but I feel like this collection should surely put her on the map for sure. Like this was just absolutely incredible. It was mind blowing. So many beautiful, like constructive dresses, like that were just like out of such like it just feels like out of like a historian video game of these like powerful women, and I just love it that it's like a woman designing for women. I really really love it, and I feel like Dilara is one of the greatest talents in the industry right now, and I feel like her business is so niche. So I'm just always worried that like some of these businesses might be too niche to begin with. Really, really, really incredible show, you guys. I was shook. I was like, oh my god, this is just absolutely incredible. And we are going to finish off with Burberry, which is always a point of contention for everybody. I feel like at this point, it was kind of like Sabato at Gucci, where everyone was just kind of tuning in to see. It's like you can't look away from a car crash. And I feel like at some points, Daniel Leah Burberry was kind of like that. But I have to say, you guys, I'm 100% on the Burberry train. This collection was absolutely incredible. I feel like we always talk about how we don't give creative directors enough time to kind of develop their vibe, but this collection, I'm sorry, it was so good. First of all, I love that all the OG Burberry girls walk, like Neelam Jill, Kate Moss, Edie Campbell, who have been walking Burberry shows for years. I love that they always walk. It feels like a Burberry family of like really loyal models, and I just like absolutely love it. This collection felt like a greatest hits of all the crucial pieces that a Burberry girl would wear. It was very like British heritage vibes, so like the thigh high utilitarian boots, those cropped bomber jackets that like in nylon, because when it rains, I feel like nylon is like the best fabric to have. The long coats and the jackets that felt kind of like ponchos, which look really chic but also really wearable, which I really like. I feel like Daniel Lee, especially when he was at Bottega, a lot of it didn't feel high fashion until the end because I feel like a lot of it was really wearable. And I feel like that's kind of the eye that he brings to Burberry because at the end of the day, Burberry is kind of like the working man's brand. It wasn't always high fashion. And I think that's the problem that he started in his first few seasons is that he felt like he had to do high fashion and like he really doesn't. He really just needs to do the wearable, utilitarian, stylish pieces, like emphasis on stylish, that the Burberry client expected. I don't think when we go to Burberry, we expect like high fashion. Love the little styling tricks, like the checkered shirts underneath the sets. Like these knitted sets had like peeking underneath the checked shirts. I loved it. I love the like skinny pant tucked into the boot with like a crop jacket and a scarf. It felt like a girl just going down to like Tesco's to pick up some few things and she just wanted to be like warm. It felt really, really chic. And I just love that Burberry is able to kind of I feel like Burberry has this emphasis on its heritage, which it should be. I mean, it is one of the most viable and recognizable British brands in the entire world. So it kind of has that responsibility to always be loyal to its brand. And I feel like with the current commercials, I think even they had like this whole Valentine's Day campaign on their Instagram. And they did this really clever kind of like mix of acting with like famous actors and like models. And it wasn't even focusing on the product, but more on like the culture of Britain, where you know how it always rains, and the use of the trench coat. And it felt really organic and like creative, and it wasn't always just about the product. I feel like a lot of these brands do these like silly, for example, those silly bag activations where they just take pictures. Influencers just take pictures of the bags on the street, and it just feels so mundane and so unoriginal. But then this content feels like it's really like unique and very like just trying to represent Britain as a whole and not even really just about the product. I feel like the product is just the second afterthought of that, and like you don't really think about it, but you end up thinking of Burberry as a brand as a whole, which I think was really great. Well, I do feel like this content is really welcoming and feels like it's a little bit tongue in cheek. These collections, I understand, can sometimes feel a little bit like intimidating, especially with the styling. It feels very like buttoned up to the top. It feels a little bit like harsh and bitchy sometimes, and it feels like really intimidating. But I'm sure that when you see it on the racks, it really depends on how you wear it. I mean, these coats feel like they're like these like shields of armor for sure. Like I know Edie Campbell wore this like nylon coat. It was really aggressive and had like a fur collar, I believe. That can be a little bit intimidating, and I feel like perhaps the usual Burberry client would feel scared to even put that on. Hopefully, Daniel Lee is staying. If he continues to develop these pieces, maybe I would tone down those kind of pieces that feel like it's super high fashion, like super intimidating. I just feel like the Burberry client isn't going to go for those pieces. They're going to go for the casual trench, and they'll go for like the seasonal runway one where there's like a little bit of like a niche to it, not just super high fashion piece. Like I don't think the Burberry client would go for that. So there have been rumors that Daniel Lee is expected to leave the brand in August. I really hope that that is not the case. I think if he gives them a few more years, he can really bring Burberry to where he's expected to be. Hopefully, I love this collection. I thought it was really good, you guys. I know he has kind of like a lot of haters, but I thought it was really good. Yeah, I'm excited to see. I just think like if he's able to hone down the brand, make it a little bit more like wearable and a little bit more accessible to more people, I think that's where we'll see the success coming in. I think that is my super short London Fashion Week report and review. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you thought of like the very short and very like few shows that were showed. Let me know what was your favorite. Let me know what was your most hated. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Hope you guys enjoyed the mini talk at the start. I wanted to share my like thoughts on London Fashion Week, especially because I've been a fan of it for like so many years. But let me know what you think. As always, I appreciate you guys tuning in every single week. And stay tuned because we have Milan, we have Paris. I mean, I feel like these are going to be two-part videos because there's so much content to talk about. So I'm really excited for these following weeks to share these videos with you guys. As always, please subscribe. It is absolutely free, and this way you can keep up with all my content. And thank you so much, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.